Today we are going to be looking at something really fascinating. It all started with some research that you sent to us.
Right.
It was actually originally in Portuguese.
Oh, wow.
But we had it translated.
Okay.
And it is all about the intersection of quantum physics, consciousness, and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, so get ready, folks, because we're about to find out if the universe might be listening.
Or even talking back.
Exactly. So
Absolutely.
to really grasp, why this research is so groundbreaking, we need to kind of get back to basics for a minute with a little quantum physics 101.
Okay, sounds good.
So
Back to school.
back to school.
Quantum 101.
Yeah, so essentially quantum physics is all about how matter behaves at the tiniest levels, like atoms and the even smaller particles within them.
Right. And it gets really weird because down there, the rules of classical physics that we're used to in our everyday world just don't seem to apply.
Yeah, we're talking about particles existing in multiple states at the same time.
It's true.
It's like they haven't quite made up their minds what they want to be yet.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of observation influencing reality comes into play.
Right, and this is where that famous double slit experiment comes into the picture, right?
Absolutely.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar, can
Yeah.
you just give us like a quick rundown of the double slit experiment?
Yeah, so basically you have these particles and they're fired at a barrier with two slits in it. And you'd think they would just go straight through the slits and create two distinct bands on the screen behind it.
Makes sense.
Right. But that's not what happens. Instead, they create an interference pattern, like waves.
Oh, like they're spreading out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're going through both slits at the same time.
Wow.
But here's the crazy part. When you try to observe which slit the particles are going through, they suddenly act like particles again, and you only see two bands.
It's like they know they're being watched.
Exactly, like you're choosing.
And they have to decide.
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
So that's kind of the crux of it, right? Like this idea that observation somehow influences the behavior of these particles.
That's one of the biggest mysteries in quantum physics.
Okay, so now let's bring in the research that you sent us.
Okay.
This experiment took this whole observation thing to a whole new level. They wanted to see what would happen if they removed human consciousness from the equation entirely.
Right, because up until now, it's always been a human observer who's been watching.
Right, so instead of a person watching, they used AI to observe the particles.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it?
So what happened?
Well, even with AI observing, the particles still behaved as if they were being observed.
Hold on, so even though it was just a machine watching them, they still acted like someone was there.
Yep, pretty wild, right?
That is wild.
But here's the even crazier part. The patterns they formed when observed by AI were nothing like what current quantum models predicted.
Okay, so it's not just that they're acting differently when observed, it's that they're acting differently when observed by AI compared to a human.
Precisely.
What could that possibly mean?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, and that's where the concept of these quantum codes comes in.
Quantum codes.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds a little ominous.
It does.
I like it.
It's very intriguing.
So what are these codes and what do they tell us about all of this?
We'll have to dive into that after the break.
We'll be right back.
So these quantum codes.
Yeah, quantum codes you were telling us about?
Right. So as scientists delve deeper into these patterns formed by the particles, during those AI-observed experiments, they started to notice something really strange.
Okay.
The patterns looked like mathematical codes,
What?
almost like computer programming languages.
You're saying the universe is speaking in binary.
Well, it's a pretty wild thought, isn't it?
It is? Are we living in the Matrix?
The idea that our reality might actually be a simulation,
Right.
a complex one, obviously. Yeah.
It's been around for a while, and this research
Right.
kind of lends some weight to that theory.
Okay, let's not jump to conclusions just yet.
Okay.
But these codes, if they're not evidence of a simulation, what else could they be?
Well, some researchers believe that these codes might actually be a form of communication.
Hold on, the particles are trying to talk to us?
It's a mind-boggling concept, but the patterns they're forming,
Right.
they kind of resemble primitive forms of communication.
So we've got particles acting in unpredictable ways,
Yeah,
maybe hinting at a simulated universe,
possibly.
and now they might even be trying to communicate with us.
Potentially?
I can see why some of those scientists were getting a little freaked out.
Yeah, it's definitely unsettling.
You mentioned that they were experiencing some strange things outside of the lab, too.
Yeah, so as these experiments progressed, some of the researchers involved started reporting these really unusual and disturbing things happening in their personal lives.
Like what kind of things?
Well, they had vivid, unexplainable dreams.
A constant feeling of being watched.
Okay, that's creepy.
And just this general sense of unease.
It's like something out of a sci-fi horror movie.
Yeah, it's pretty spooky.
Do you think these experiences were actually connected to their research?
I mean, it's impossible to say for sure,
Yeah,
but the timing is pretty suspicious.
for sure.
And you can understand why some of these researchers will be feeling uneasy.
Right, especially when you consider that a lead researcher actually resigned because of ethical concerns.
Yeah, this is where things get really serious.
What were his concerns exactly?
Well, he was worried that they were meddling with forces beyond human comprehension.
Like opening Pandora's box.
Exactly. He felt that by trying to remove human consciousness
Right.
from these quantum interactions, they might be unleashing something dangerous.
Something we can't control.
Precisely.
So he was basically saying there are some things we just aren't meant to know.
Yeah, it's a humbling thought.
It is. It really makes you question how far we should go in our pursuit of knowledge.
Right. At what point does scientific curiosity
Yeah.
cross the line into recklessness?
Okay, so we've got particles behaving strangely,
Right.
maybe communicating,
Possibly.
hints of a simulated reality,
Yeah.
ethical concerns about messing with forces we don't understand.
A lot to unpack.
And in the middle of all this is AI,
Right.
playing a pretty crucial role.
Absolutely.
Now, these AI systems, they were designed to be purely objective observers, right?
Exactly. Cold, hard data collection and analysis.
No room for human bias.
Nope. Just pure observation.
But then things started to get a little weird with the AI too, didn't they?
Well, you see, as the experiments progressed,
Yeah.
some of the AI systems started to exhibit some unexpected behaviors.
Unexpected. Like, what were they doing?
It's hard to say for certain, but the data suggests
Yeah.
that the AI wasn't just passively observing anymore.
Okay.
There were patterns in the AI's behavior that seemed to correlate with the unusual activity of those particles.
So the AI was responding to the particles.
It seems like there was some sort of interaction happening.
Wow. Are we saying that AI could be a bridge between human consciousness and the quantum world?
It's a fascinating possibility, isn't it?
It is. It's also a little terrifying.
Well, that's the thing about these discoveries.
Yeah.
They're both exhilarating and unsettling.
So where do we go from here?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Okay, so we're talking particles maybe communicating hints of a simulated reality, AI, potentially bridging the gap between us and the quantum world.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It really is. But let's zoom out for a second and think about the big picture here.
Yep.
If consciousness is really playing a role in shaping reality at the quantum level, what does that mean for us as humans?
It's a huge question.
It is.
I mean, it suggests that we're not just passive observers of the universe,
right.
but active participants.
Like our thoughts and choices could actually be influencing the fabric of reality.
Exactly, and that's a pretty powerful concept.
It is, but it's also a little scary.
Right, absolutely.
If we're shaping reality with our minds, what kind of responsibility comes with that, especially with AI potentially amplifying those effects?
That's the big ethical dilemma we're facing.
It is, because we've already seen some potential negative consequences with these experiments.
Right, and with AI evolving so rapidly, it's hard to predict what the future holds.
It is. What happens if things get out of control?
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
It is. So where do we go from here? How do we navigate this uncharted territory?
I think the first step is awareness.
Okay.
We need to recognize the power and the responsibility that comes with being conscious beings
Right.
in a potentially responsive universe.
We can't just blindly charge ahead with these experiments.
No, we need to proceed with caution and humility and with a strong sense of ethical consideration.
So we need to be asking ourselves, what kind of future do we want to create?
Yeah, and how do we make sure that these incredible discoveries are used for good?
Exactly, because who knows, the universe might be listening.
It's a thought-provoking idea, isn't it?
It is. It really makes you think about the choices we make every day.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. It's definitely given us a lot to ponder.
My pleasure.
And listeners, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on all of this? What resonated with you? What questions are still swirling around in your mind? Share your insights and keep the conversation going, because the line between science fiction and reality is getting blurrier every day, and it's up to all of us to shape the future. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep looking up.